The Adventures of Galldora. Galldora was only a homemade rag doll, with shoe-button eyes and a sewn-on mouth and black wool hair. But she had heaps of personality. She belonged to a little girl called Marybell, who loved her very much, but wasn't always very careful to look after her, so that Galldora was always getting lost. She was lost in the middle of a stream, lost on top of a roof, and lost in all sorts of other strange places. It was very inconvenient to be lost so often, but it did teach her a good deal about the world. And, as Galldora sensibly said, a doll's got to have something, and if she hasn't got looks, education is useful. Galldora and the Small Reward. Galldora was a rag doll, just a homemade rag doll, with shoe-button eyes and a sewn-on mouth and black wool hair. But though she was homemade, Galldora could laugh and sing and cry in doll fashion just as well as any other doll. One day, Marybell, the little girl who owned Galldora, came into the nursery and said, "Darling dolls and teddies, I've got a new pram, and I'm going to take you all out for a ride." The dolls and teddies were delighted, and so was the small stuffed cat. In fact, everyone in the nursery was pleased, except Galldora. Poor Galldora sat on the windowsill with her head bowed very low, for she felt sure she'd be left out of the treat. After all, she was just a homemade rag doll, and prams were very grand. Then, to her great surprise, Marybell picked her up and said, "You're coming too, Galldora. You look as if you could do with some fresh air. You look a little pale." "Me, thought Galldora as she was pushed into the bottom of the pram. "Me, fancy not being left out after all." She was so thrilled that she hardly noticed what a squash there was in the pram as doll after doll and large and small teddy bears came piling in on top of her. "Could you squeeze down a bit, Galldora?" a teddy bear said, quite kindly, and a large plastic doll said, "I might be rather heavy on your leg, Galldora, but I'm afraid that's where I'll have to sit. There's nowhere else." "It's all right," answered Galldora. She was in such a state of excitement. "Me, Galldora, in a pram," she kept on saying to herself. Of course she didn't see much, because she was right at the very bottom, with all the dolls and teddies on top of her keeping out the view. But she knew she was going along in the pram because she was jolted and bumped. Then there was an extra large bump and a nothing. "Help!" squeaked Bobo, the stuffed cat. "I don't like this at all." "Why, what's the matter?" asked Galldora. "We're in the middle of a stream, and it's most awfully full of water, and as everybody knows, water's very bad for cats." "Are we sinking?" asked Galldora. She was quite unafraid and merely interested. "If we don't move very much," said the big teddy, "we'll be all right. The pram will be like a boat." "The water's running past us, and it's making me feel dizzy," sighed Lulu, the walkie-talkie doll. "I feel ever so dizzy, ever so dizzy." "But why are we here?" asked Galldora. "Well," said a smelly white bear, "Marybell said the river would give the pram a nice wash, and she's gone off and left us. She's gone back for a scrubbing brush and some soap, which she forgot." "Oh, well, I suppose she'll come back," thought Galldora. and she stayed peacefully at the bottom of the pram, staring at the chinks of blue sky, and humming little tunes to herself. All the other dolls and teddies chatted away and tried to help Lulu get over her dizzy feeling and the stuffed cat to get over his nerves. But Marybell didn't come back. She'd forgotten all about the new pram. She'd run off to play with her very best friend Gay, and she stayed a long time with Gay, swinging on Gay's swing. Then she went home to tea. And it wasn't until she was splashing about in her bath that she remembered her pram. The splashing reminded her. As soon as she remembered, she grew very silent. She was so silent after her bath, and so very silent during her supper, that at last her mummy asked, "What's the matter, Marybell?" "It's got lost," said Marybell, not quite knowing what to say. "What has, Marybell?" asked her mother. "My new pram," said Marybell. "It's got lost in the stream." And that was all Marybell would say. "But how could it get lost?" asked her mother. "And when did it get lost?" "It got lost while it was having a wash in the stream," said Marybell. "It's got lost in the stream." At last Marybell's mother went down to the stream to have a look, and she found the pram lying on its side right in the water, with the weeds and the tadpoles all floating in and about it. She pulled the pram out and set it upright, and then she fished about with a long stick and rescued all the teddies and the dolls that she could find. "Well, I suppose that's the lot of you," said Marybell's mother, as she bundled them into the very wet pram. "There doesn't seem to be any more. Well, home we go," and she pushed the dolls and the teddies and the stuffed cat home again. But Galldora was not in the pram. Galldora was a mile away, floating quite happily down the stream. "Now this," thought Galldora, "is one of the nicest ways of travelling. Of course it's a bit wet, and you don't suppose the water will do my stuffing any good. But one can't expect everything. I really think it's even nicer than the pram ride." But suddenly she was swooped round in a little eddy of water as it flowed swiftly from under a low iron bridge. The waters whirled her and some floating sticks up against great smooth stones. To Galldora's surprise, there she stopped. "Well," thought Galldora, "I suppose I could be in a worse place. And now that I'm quite jammed up against these stones, with the sticks all about me, it's not so likely that I'll sink." All that night Galldora stayed there, and she was quite happy, watching the stars and listening to the owls. "It's all like a lesson," she told herself, "like being educated." Next day she found she didn't lack for company. She was visited by an inquisitive trout who had a nibble at her shoes, and when a toad came and hopped all over her, and decided she made a very nice sunbathing place. Then a thrush came and had a tug at her eyes, thinking they were small snails. And later a cocky little chaffinch came and asked, "There, please, Ragdoll, have a piece of your nice hair. It will just do for my nest." "Certainly," said Galldora. "Just help yourself." The chaffinch did. He came back time and time again, and worried at her hair until she wondered if she would have any hair left. Thinking of nests, Galldora sighed. Just one or two sighs, in a homesick way. "I wonder," she began to think, "if I will ever see all the teddy bears and dolls again, and my own special windowsill." When the sun was high in the heavens, a fisherman came walking along the river path and stopped on the bridge. He leant there for a moment, gazing down at the cool, clear waters and wondering about the fish. As he looked, his eye was caught by a piece of red-coloured cloth, all muddled up in the pile of driftwood against the big stones in the reeds. He went over and kicked it in a wondering sort of way with the toes of his boots. The red-coloured rag was, of course, Galldora, and the kick made her legs and arms leap about. "Well, well," said the fisherman, "a rag doll." He bent down and picked Galldora out of the water and wrung her out, and he set her up on an iron spike on the railings of the bridge. "I suppose some little girl will be looking for you," said the fisherman. And being a kind fisherman, he arranged Galldora very comfortably. He put the spike through the back of her dress and through the back part of her woolly hair, so that her face was right up, and she looked straight out and could watch all that was happening. Then the fisherman tucked her arms one into the other so they didn't dangle down. Galldora thought the fisherman was the kindest person she'd ever met. He'd certainly taken a lot of trouble over her. She stayed there on the railings in the sun, smiling out on the world as she dried. It was a lovely, all-alone place where Galldora was, and it was full of all the hanging green trees and mossy banks. The primroses shone there like stars, and of course it was just the place where birds felt very at home. So at home that they were all crowded up, and the nests were just everywhere. One lady robin, who had found all the holes and crevices already full of other birds' nests, came flying over to the bridge and perched there, looking about for a home. As her bright beady eyes were flickering this way and that, they met Galldora's bright shoe-button eyes. "Oh dear, you do look worried," said Galldora. "Yes, I am," said the lady robin, "very worried." "What's the matter?" asked Galldora. "Well, it's this way," explained the lady robin. "I can't find anywhere to make my nest. Everywhere's full up this year." "Oh, could I? Well, if you didn't think I was interfering, make a suggestion," said Galldora timidly. The lady robin cocked her head on one side to listen. "You see my hands?" said Galldora. "They're tucked up, aren't they?" "Yes," said the lady robin. "Well," said Galldora, still very timidly, "come and have a closer look." The lady robin flew over and, perching on Galldora's head, looked at Galldora's tucked-up arms. "Why," said the lady robin, "what a wonderful cosy place to make a nest. It's just what I'm looking for." And she flew away and came back a little later with her husband. At once they started to build a nest in Galldora's arms. Now, some days later, the fisherman passed Marybell's house. Outside, on a little tree, he saw a notice hanging by some string, and the notice said, "Lost, a rag doll. Lost in liver. If found, small reward." He rang the bell and told Marybell's mother all about Galldora. So that afternoon, Marybell and her mother went down to the lonely, greeny part of the river where very few people went, except fishermen, and there on the bridge, just as they'd been told, they found Galldora. There, too, they found in Galldora's arms a nest with 4 eggs. Marybell's mother, who understood all about eggs and nests, took Marybell a little way away, and they both sat very silent on the river bank and watched. Quite soon, the lady robin came flying straight to Galldora and sat in the nest. Marybell was so excited she wanted to jump up and pick up the eggs, but her mother said, "No, Marybell, you'll upset her, but we'll come every day to see the robin." So every day Marybell came and looked at Galldora and the robins, from a safe distance, of course, so as not to upset the robins. And every day when she left, Marybell waved her hand at Galldora. And every day Galldora seemed to wink back. Marybell was so proud of Galldora, she said, "You know, Mummy, I think Galldora is the cleverest of all my dolls. I think she must have the small reward that the fishermen didn't want." So Galldora, when the baby robins had grown up and flown away, and she had come home, was given the small reward, which was a diamond star brooch out of a cracker. And Galldora proudly wears it, even to this day. Galldora's birthday present. Galldora had been given to Marybell by her favourite uncle, Uncle Jack, as an unbirthday present. This made it very difficult for Marybell to remember Galldora's birthday. Some of the dolls and teddies had their birthdays on Christmas Day, which was a proper sort of day to have a birthday on, while the other dolls and teddies had their birthdays on the same day as Marybell's. That day was easy to remember, and they all had a share of Marybell's birthday cake. But Marybell did get a bit muddled trying to remember Galldora's birthday. So sometimes on a bright summer's day, Marybell would say, "It's your birthday today, Galldora." And sometimes Galldora had a birthday in November. Some years she had 2 birthdays. But other years Galldora didn't have a birthday at all. "I don't mind a bit not having a birthday," Galldora would say to herself, "for if I did have 2 birthdays every year, I think I'd be a very old doll by now. Not having birthdays every now and again keeps one young." One cold winter's day, Marybell said, "Tomorrow, Galldora, it's your birthday." Galldora smiled at Marybell. "Oh, how lovely! That would be very nice." "It's got to be tomorrow and not today," explained Marybell, "because there's a lot of preparing to do." "Preparing?" thought Galldora. "That sounds as if it's going to be a proper birthday." All that day, Marybell polished up the nursery and washed and scrubbed the dolls. She brushed the teddies and tied bright ribbons on them all. The teddies all had blue ribbons tied in beautiful bows round their necks, because they were boys, and the dolls all had pink ribbons in their hair, because they were girls, while the stuffed cat had a yellow ribbon tied round his middle, as Marybell could never make up her mind whether the stuffed cat was a boy or a girl. "Oh dear," suddenly said Marybell when she came to Galldora. "I haven't any ribbons left. Still, perhaps it doesn't matter. As it's your birthday, Galldora dear, you can come to the tea party just as you are." Before Marybell went to bed, she arranged all the dolls and teddies and the stuffed cat on the window seat. They looked so smart, brushed and washed, and their ribbons looked very gay. Galldora, as it was Galldora's birthday, she left on the window sill, just above them. "There," said Marybell. "Now we're all ready for Galldora's birthday tomorrow. How nice you all look, and Bobo, I've never seen you looking so well and smart. I think that yellow ribbon round your middle makes you look very handsome. Now, good night, all of you, and tomorrow we'll have lovely fun, for it's Galldora's birthday, remember." The nursery door closed softly, and Marybell went to bed. After a while, there was a soft whisper among the toys on the window seat. It was like the soft rustling of wind among the winter trees. Galldora was suddenly aware that the dolls and teddies were whispering about her. "Galldora's so kind, I'm sure she's thought of a present for us," said Lulu, the walkie-talkie doll. "Yes, she is so clever," said Bobo. "I'm sure she's thought up a wonderful present for us all." "Galldora's the only one that could think up a present. She's got such a lot of brains," said the baby doll. "Dear Galldora, she's so old and wise," the white teddy softly growled. "Me," thought Galldora. "They're talking about me, and they're thinking all those nice things about me. But I haven't thought of any presents to give them. It's my birthday, but still, yes, it would be nice to give them all a present on my birthday." Soon their whisperings grew fainter and fainter, and Galldora could only catch a whisper that sounded like, "Marybell thought up a wonderful present for me to give Galldora. It is—" "That's the big teddy," said Galldora to herself. "He never could speak softly." Then she heard Alouetta say in her chirpy way, "Marybell wrapped my present to Galldora in silver paper. It makes it look better as it's so little, but fun." "Oh dear," thought poor Galldora. "How can I open all my presents and say thank you when I haven't got anything for them, and they're all expecting one? It's going to be a very muddled-up birthday." Silence fell in the nursery. All the toys were asleep, except Galldora. "I must think of something," thought Galldora. "It's all so still. I'm sure that's good for thinking. But oh, if only some magic would happen, if only I had a magic wand. But I'm no fairy, only a rag doll. Still, if I wished and wished—" Galldora made herself quite dizzy with wishing. But though Galldora had no magic wand, there was magic in the night. It was Marybell's mother who started the magic. She came into the nursery and put Galldora's presents on the table. Then Marybell's mother came over to the window. "We must have a little air," she said. "It's very stuffy in here, but I know Marybell will be very upset if I move any of the dolls and teddies." So she opened the window by Galldora. "There," she said. "That's better. Nice, clean air." And with that she went away. It grew so cold the stars began to sing to the moon to warm themselves up. And they sang together, "Bright moonlight, please bring snow tonight." Then the moon smiled and said, "That would be fun," and called to the winds, "Wind east, wind north, bring snow forth." The winds blew, and soon the sky was full of dancing, falling snowflakes. They fell through the half-open window and on to Galldora. The snow blew all over Galldora until she could hardly see for snow. It covered her wool hair, it covered her face, till her shoe-button eyes could only peep out. It covered her shoulders, then her whole body, and it filled her lap. It piled up higher and higher, and still the wind blew. By early morning, Galldora was so covered by snow that she suddenly toppled over, and as she fell, clouds of the snow floated on all the dolls and teddies, till each of them had enough snow on their paws, or on their legs, or on their dresses, to make for each of them a little snowball. Galldora lay on the floor, face downward. She was so tired with thinking about what to give them all as a present that she went fast asleep. Next morning, Marybell came into the nursery. It was still very early, and Marybell was in her dressing gown. She saw Galldora on the floor. She picked Galldora up. Galldora looked so wet and sad, and it looked as if her shoe-button eyes had been crying and crying. "Oh, Galldora," said Marybell, "you mustn't cry today. It's your birthday." Then Marybell saw the snow on the other dolls and teddies. "Why, Galldora," she said, "I believe you've put it there. You've given them all a present." And Marybell made of the snow a little snowball for each of them. When she had finished, she woke them up and said, "Listen, dolls and teddies, Galldora's been so kind, As it's her birthday, she's given you all a present of a snowball each." The dolls and teddies were terribly excited and looked at their snowballs with delight. "Oh, thank you, Galldora," they cried. "What a nice present. We knew you were clever and kind and would think up something lovely. But this is really like magic." So my wish came true, Galldora thought. Though I had no magic, someone must have had to magic up the snow. Galldora had an extra happy birthday. Galldora and Mr Punch. One day, Galldora had an adventure that turned her into a real actress. First, she was left on a road where Marybell had dropped her. Then she was picked up by a dog, who ran with her into a park. The dog got tired of playing with her and left her on a flower bed. The park keeper came along and looked at Galldora. Was all the park keeper said. He picked Galldora up by one of her legs, and he took her to the large house in the park lawns. "Mrs. Humphrey," he called. Mrs. Humphrey came and looked at Galldora. "Shall we throw her into the dustbin?" asked the park keeper. Mrs. Humphrey said, "Of course not. That doll belongs to some child. I never heard of anything so wicked as wanting to throw a poor rag doll into the dustbin." And she carried Galldora down a long hallway. Galldora was beginning to feel a bit dizzy. She had been upside down and dangled sideways for such a long time that she began to wonder if she would ever be upright again. Mrs. Humphrey put Galldora in a great oak chest. It was very dark and stuffy in the chest. After a while, Galldora found she could see perfectly well, perhaps because she had shoe-button eyes. She saw a coat, 2 umbrellas, a shooting stick, a walking stick, and a hat. "Now what happens, I wonder?" said Galldora out loud. "Ah," said a voice quite near her. "This is your first time, is it?" Looking round, Galldora saw a silver pocket watch. "Was it you who spoke?" she asked. "Yes," said the watch. "I can see it's your first time." "First time of what?" asked Galldora. "Some things," said the watch crossly. "Some things are made without brains. But when ye were thrown in, I said to myself, here's a nice, intelligent, well-mannered thing, and I can have a nice long conversation with it. But oh no, I see you are just as stupid as everything else in this box." Galldora gasped. What a very old watch, she thought, that she was too polite to say so. "Oh, listen to him. There he goes again," chuckled the coat. "Take no notice," said the hat. "That's right. If none of us take any notice, he will soon stop ticking," said the 2 umbrellas together. But Galldora was so interested to know what was going to happen to her, she just couldn't keep quiet. "Could you tell me, Mr. Watch, please, what happens to us next?" "I see an idea," said the watch, suddenly getting quite polite. "You have never been lost before." "Oh, yes, many times," said Galldora, which was true. "Jolly good show," said the shooting stick, waking up and then falling asleep again. "Oh, no, dear. You couldn't possibly have been lost before. Otherwise you'd know all about it. went on the watch. But I have, said Galldora. I have. I've been masked lots and lots of times. Now I, continued the watch, taking no notice of Galldora's remarks, have been lost many times in my life. I was once lost on the Underground in London, once on top of a bus in Manchester, once in a coach, a long-distance coach, and once in a cinema in Brighton, and then outside a church at a wedding, and between the lining of an old coat. And now here. I had a most interesting time once when I was lost, began Galldora, joining in conversation. Jolly good show, said the shooting stick, waking up again and interrupting her. I am much travelled, went on the watch. So am I. I've been to Switzerland, and the Pennines, and the Lake District, suddenly chipped in a very knobbly walking stick with a spike on it. Now the Underground of London, said the watch. Just then the lid of the box was lifted and a hand lifted out the coat. Was this the coat, sir? asked Mrs. Humphrey. Yes, that's it. Oh, how wonderful to have it back, said Diana, and the lid closed. I wonder, thought Galldora, if Marybell will come for me, or Marybell's mummy, or Marybell's daddy. But they didn't, and Galldora stayed in the box for a whole long week. She began to be tired of the rambling stories of the Silver Watch who had travelled so much, even though they were interesting. So she was quite pleased when the shooting stick woke up every now and again and said, "Jolly good show." It made a change. She found the walking stick most friendly, but he was soon taken out of the box and given back to his owner. The Trilby hat went too, and the umbrellas, and soon there was nothing left but Galldora, the watch, and the shooting stick. There was one other new thing put in, a lavender wool shawl. It was a very gentle, ladylike shawl, and only murmured softly to itself just every now and again. "Oh dear me, oh dear me, I do hope the mirths don't get me." Then one day Mrs. Humphrey came for Galldora. Mrs. Humphrey took her out and carried her down the long hallway. "Oh, Marybell be pleased to see me," said Galldora happily to herself. But Marybell was not there. Galldora was handed by Mrs. Humphrey to a small man with ginger hair. "Will this do?" asked Mrs. Humphrey. The man with the ginger hair looked at Galldora. "She'll have to," he said. "But I don't know what Punch will say." He took Galldora out of the big house into the park. Galldora was surprised to see the park had changed. There were many gay stalls and a small roundabout, and a Punch and Judy show. Galldora was taken behind the Punch and Judy box. There Galldora met Mr. Punch, who was quite an ugly doll with a big hooked nose, but he winked at Galldora. Galldora didn't like the look of Mr. Punch at all, and Mr. Punch didn't seem to like the look of Galldora. He took one look at her and turned angrily to the man with ginger hair. "I won't act with her," said Mr. Punch at once. "I want my Judy." "I haven't got time to go back for Judy now," said the man with the ginger hair. "You'll just have to act with the rag doll." Mr. Punch said, "All right. Now remember, my dear," he said to Galldora, "all I do is in fun." Then he hit Galldora on the head. Galldora was so cross that she picked up a big stick near her and hit Mr. Punch on the top of his head. "I'll teach you!" she screamed, in a voice that was not at all her own. A roar of laughter came from the people watching. Galldora found she was on the stage, acting. She began to enjoy herself. When Galldora took her bow, she heard a voice call, "Galldora!" And looking down, she saw her own darling Marybell waving. She waved back. Marybell's mother came and talked to the man with the ginger hair. And that evening, after Galldora had been clapped and clapped for acting so well, she went happily home with Marybell. She had so much to tell the dolls and the teddies about the much-travelled watch and the shooting stick, and of course about Mr. Punch, who was such a grand old actor. Galldora and the Little Cat. One day Galldora found herself sitting on top of a house. "It's a good thing I'm not afraid of heights," she thought, as she sat there propped up against a chimney stack. The sun blazed, and the green trees stirred very gently, and the whole summery, hot, hazy garden spread out below like a dream. Galldora watched the swallows flying about, and heard them chattering away to themselves, and looking up she could see the swifts. Miles and miles up they winged, racing each other and screaming with joy. Looking far down, she could see a family of long-tailed tits flying here and there like little wind-up toys. "I suppose," thought Galldora, "it must be rather nice to be a bird and fly. If only I could fly, all my troubles would be over. I could just fly down into the lawn." Just then, 2 wood pigeons came and sat on the roof beside her. They looked at her with one eye, and then with the other. "Funny," thought Galldora. "He can't look at me with both eyes at once." A little later, when the sun was dipping and the shadows stretched out and out, Galldora saw the little boy who had thrown her up from the nursery window and onto the roof. He was saying goodbye to his cousin Marybell, and to Marybell's mummy and daddy. His own mummy and daddy were with him. They were all laughing and talking and saying, "Goodbye and thank you for a lovely day," over and over again. Or so it seemed to Galldora, who was watching. The little boy did cast a look up at Galldora, a hurried look. "I hope," thought poor Galldora, "he will say something about me before he goes." But he didn't. All was peaceful in the garden once again. All the birds and the sleepy hot flowers and the full-leaved trees were happy and all in their right places. All except Galldora. "The sitting on a roof is no place at all for a rag doll," thought Galldora. "It's all right for birds, but not for rag dolls. Still, perhaps that little boy didn't mean me to get stuck." A blackbird came and sat on an old apple tree in the garden and started up a clear, tuneful evening song. Marybell's mother and Marybell came and tidied up deck chairs and cushions that were lying on the lawn. "Listen, Marybell, that blackbird is singing beautifully." And both Marybell and her mother stood for a moment and looked up at the bird and listened. "If I had a worm, I would give it to that blackbird for singing so beautifully," said Marybell. Then, having tidied up the lawn, both Marybell and her mother went back into the house. The long shadows mingled one with another, and soon the night wind blew a star into the sky. The moon came out to ride her long lane wide in the heavens, and see that all was in order, and all the little stars hurried to their places. "This is terribly sad," thought Galldora. "Though the saddest thing of all is that there is nobody here to know how sad I am." Just then Galldora's attention was caught by a strange noise, a scratching noise and a faint purr. Then more scratching noises came, then a soft meow. Galldora saw a small furry face coming round the chimney stack, whiskers first. "It's a dear little white and black cat," said Galldora to herself. "I'm so glad. Now I will have somebody to know how sad I am." One white paw, then a black paw, came round the stack, and the little cat's shoulders came too. It was creeping silently and cautiously, gazing about with great wide eyes. At first, because Galldora didn't move, it didn't see the rag doll. But as soon as it saw Galldora, the little cat was so startled it nearly fell off the roof.
"It's all right. Really, it's all right. It's only Minnie,"
called Galldora. "Oh, it's you, is it?" answered the cat. It came and sniffed Galldora, then it looked about, and it whispered, "Where are they?"
"Who?"
asked Galldora. "The gang," whispered the little cat. Galldora was just going to say, "What gang?" when she noticed the little cat had gone. Suddenly the little cat appeared round the other side of the chimney stack, and it whispered, "They're not here yet."
"Must you be so mysterious?"
asked Galldora. "Who's the gang?" "The gang of the big cats," answered the little cat, speaking very softly. "And I do hope, now that I've managed to climb the roof, they'll let me in on all their secrets. They discuss very important things, you know, that they never let on. Well, anyway, not when they're down there. Even if I say hello, they look straight through me. Really they do. Straight through me as if I was a baby still. And it's most upsetting. But I've climbed the roof now, so—" "Oh, what was that?" suddenly exclaimed the little cat. An appalling caterwauling had started. The little cat smiled. "That's them," he whispered. "Oh dear, I do feel all of a quiver."
"If I were you,"
Galldora started,
"I should ask them politely."
but she got no further, for the noise the cats were making was deafening. It grew louder and louder, and then a low whinny started up. The little cat was grinning. "They're gathering! They're gathering!" he purred excitedly. "Did they sing beautifully? Excuse me, I'll go and join them now." Galldora hoped all would be well with the little cat, but there was such a hissing and screaming and snarling and grumbling and fur-flying that Galldora was afraid the big cats had all set on the little cat as soon as they saw him.
"Oh, I do hope they don't hurt him,"
thought Galldora, getting very motherly. Suddenly the little cat came round the chimney stack again.
"Well?"
asked Galldora curiously. "Oh dear," gasped the little cat. "It's worse and worse." "How?" "Because I've got to answer questions before I can join the gang. The first one is ever so difficult. I simply don't know what the answer is." "Well, what's the question?" asked Galldora, and added proudly, "I may be able to help you." "I hope you can." "It is, what looks with one eye but has two?"
"Oh, but I know!"
cried Galldora excitedly. "Oh, please don't talk so loudly," begged the little cat. "They'll hear you." "I do know," Galldora whispered. "It's birds." "Are you sure?" asked the little cat.
"Why, yes, the 2 pigeons came and sat on the roof here beside me this very afternoon, and they could only look at me with one eye at a time. I noticed specially."
The little cat said nothing. He licked his paw, and then licked round his face.
"I know that's right. All I do," said Galldora.
"Go on. Go on, tell them." The little cat still took no notice. Then he got up, stretched, and went round the chimney stack without a word. A low chanting started from the big cats. This went on for a terribly long time. Then the screeching and hissing started up again. The little cat came back to Galldora. He was looking scared again, but this time there was a little glint of cockiness in his wide gold eyes. "Well?" asked Galldora. "I gave the right answer," was all the little cat said. "He might thank me," thought Galldora, but the little cat didn't thank her. He only said, "They asked me another question." "Well, he can jolly well think of the answer for himself," thought Galldora. "The question was, how can you get milk and food for the humans? I said, I just cry. but they said that wasn't the right answer. Of course it wasn't right, said Galldora, and though she didn't have any intention of helping the little cat, she couldn't help saying, "If I could sing, I'd sing. And then my dear Marybell, the girl who owns me, you know, she'd say, 'Why, Galldora, how beautifully you sing,' and she'd give me anything I wanted." "How do you know?" asked the little cat, sitting very straight and squinting at the moon. "When the blackbird sang in the garden," went on Galldora, "Marybell looked up at him and said, 'If I had a worm, I would give it to that blackbird for singing so beautifully.'" "Ah," smiled the little cat, "but of course you can't sing." "I can purr," answered the little cat, and he padded away over the roof. Galldora listened, but this time no whining or caterwauling happened. The little cat appeared again, very quickly. It sat down and started to try and lick behind its ears. "I'm not going to talk to that little cat," Galldora told herself. "He's getting more conceited every moment. You can talk to me first if you wants to." He did, and the little cat said, "I'm getting very clever at this guessing game." Then he had another lick, and he said, as if it wasn't anything very important, "I've got to answer a third and last question." And the little cat went on licking himself, and Galldora went on being silent. The little cat couldn't get its paws behind its ears, try as it might. "Ah, so it's not going to rain," said Galldora. She never could keep quiet for long. "And why do you think that?" asked the little cat, turning his head slightly away. "Because you haven't licked behind your ears. Cats only lick behind their ears when it's going to rain. That's what Marybell told him anyway." "Now I know," said the little cat, and it put its little pink tongue out and licked its black nose. Then it got up and walked away with its tail held high in a question mark. "Oh, bother," said Galldora to herself. "I believe that was the answer to the third question. He wanted to know what cats do when it's going to rain." It must have been the right answer to the third question, for all the rest of the night the little cat sat with the big cats on the far side of the roof and listened to them discussing high secrets. To Galldora it sounded a terrible noise, and she was quite pleased when a window below her was opened and Marybell's daddy looked out and shouted, "Shoo! Shoo!" and then clapped his hands. The cats, in a great flurry, hissed and screamed as they leapt and scrambled and jumped off the roof. They made such a din that they set Sparks the cocker-spaniel barking in the kitchen, and they set another dog barking too. It was a long way off, but it barked balefully on and on. The loud barking of the distant dog upset the owls. A little owl started his stark cry that wasn't unlike a bark. Went the little owl. Called a great tawny owl as it swooped low over the roof, and seeing Galldora's eyes glint in the moonlight, dived, and then flew away. "My eyes must be shining," thought Galldora. The owl turned, coming back for another look. "Help! Hide me! I'm frightened of that owl," came a little voice, and Galldora saw the little cat cringing against the chimney stack. Galldora's motherly instincts were roused. She forgot how rude and conceited the little cat had been. "Hook!" she called. "Come and hide with me. Snuggle up, as close as you can under my arm." "Thank you," whimpered the little cat. "Now keep your head down," ordered Galldora, "and don't crawl or make a move." The great owl came a third time over the chimney, and it alighted on the chimney stack and stared down at Galldora. "What in the world are you?" it asked. "I'm a rag doll," answered Galldora bravely. "Fur," said the owl. "Fur. What's that fur?" "Oh, that!" and Galldora laughed gaily. "That's my fur coat, and I find it comfortable to lean against, you know." "Really?" said the owl. "Really? And why are you on the roof sitting up here so boldly? Don't you hide when you see me, or try to? I am a great hunter, much feared."
Then why should I hide?
I'm very unpleasant to eat, said Galldora, smiling brightly.
I'm so unpleasant to eat that even one bite at me would make you feel sick.
Really? Said the owl, and blinked. The things one learns, he said, and he flew off. As soon as the owl had gone, the little cat licked Galldora's face all over. "Oh, thank you, he cried. "You're a real lady." "That's better," thought Galldora. "And are you one of the gang now?" she asked. The little cat hung his head. "Yes," he said in a very low voice. "Yes." "Why, cheer up then," said Galldora. "What are you so miserable about? You're a big cat now, and isn't that grand?" "I suppose so," murmured the little cat. Only... "Only what?" asked Galldora. "Only..." And the little cat looked at the rag doll with its wide eyes. "Only I can't get down. I did try, honestly I did. And when the big cats called out and told me to follow them, I pretended I was going the other way. But I hid, 'cause I didn't want to shame myself, and let them know that I couldn't get down. Not after answering all those difficult questions, the ones you answered for me, I mean." "That's a very sad story," said Galldora. "Well, I suppose you'll just have to stay up here." "Yes," answered the little cat. "I'll have to stay until I grow big enough to climb down." But the little cat wasn't very patient. As soon as a cock crowed, the little cat said, "Oh dear, I am thirsty." And when the robin woke and sang loudly in the apple tree below, the little cat said, "Oh, I would love some milk." And when the blackbird started up and woke the chaffinch, and he woke the wood pigeons, and they woke a great many other birds, the little cat said, "I don't think I can wait until I grow up." And then Sparks, the spaniel, came lushing out of the back door and barked at the milkman in a friendly, tail-wagging way. The little cat said, "I know I can't wait till I grow up," and he started to meow. Once he had started to meow, the little cat went on meowing and meowing. Soon Sparks pricked up his ears, and he sat on the lawn and looked up at the roof. Then he barked. He could see the little cat walking round and round the chimney stack, and in between his barks he could hear the little cat meowing. The barking brought out Marybell and Marybell's daddy. "What is it, old man?" asked Marybell's daddy. "Look!" Sparks barked. "Look up there!" "Look, Daddy, look!" cried Marybell, who understood Sparks. "On the roof! It's a poor little pussy." Marybell's Mommy joined them then, and she looked up too. There they all stood and wondered what to do, but none of them saw Galldora. Galldora was very afraid nobody would notice her, so she said to the cat, "I've done you 2 good turns, haven't I?" "Yes," said the little cat. "But I wish you could do me another and get me off this roof. And I can't wait till I'm grown up." "Oh, they'll get you down all right," said Galldora, "now that they've seen you. But do me a good turn, will you, and stand by me? Then when they come and get you, they'll notice me too." "All right," said the little cat. "You have been very kind to me. But oh, I must get down. I hate it here. I hate it here. I want some milk." And on cried the little cat, louder and louder. Marybell's daddy fetched a ladder, and with the help of 2 neighbours and the owner of the little cat, he climbed up to the roof, and just as he lifted the little cat, he saw the rag doll. "Good gracious, Galldora, fancy finding you here." He picked Galldora up and brought her down too. He handed the little cat to the little cat's owner, who was delighted to have him back, and hurried him away to a big saucer of milk. He handed Galldora to Marybell, saying, "Ahoy, old dolls, Marybell. Galldora is the strangest. Fancy getting on top of the roof." "I know," answered Marybell kindly. "Galldora is very strange, but you can't help it. I think it's because she's a rag doll."